I get asked a lot, yo Rakeem, why did you choose to be a big man? Yo, I just want to share with you why. So I first started watching the NBA in the early and mid 2000s. This was the era of Tim Duncan, the era of Kobe Bryant. This was the beginnings of LeBron James' career and Dwayne Wade. And I've noticed during my experience of watching the NBA for over 15 years, I realized that the big man has a lot of value, yet they're unappreciated. What does that mean? Well, I see nowadays a lot of people, they have their point guards. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to create a my player that it's a point guard. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've noticed that there aren't many bigs nowadays. And honestly, being a big, it just has so much value. Just think about this. Who has the most NBA championships of all time as an NBA player? Bill Russell. What was he? A big man. Who scored the most points, career points in NBA history? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Guess who he was? A big man. Yo, who scored the most points in an NBA game? You guessed it. A big man. So when I'm thinking about this, the big men in the NBA have done remarkable things in its history. And the big man has so much value that a lot of teams, even back in the days and even to this day, still want to build their organization around a big. So before we get into the modern teams, let's talk about the retro teams, like the dynasties, like the Knicks dynasty. When they won 2 NBA championships, who was their centerpiece? Willis Reed. What about that Celtics team? Bill Russell. What about the Lakers team in the 70s, the 60s and 70s? Wilt Chamberlain. Right? What about the Lakers team in the 80s? They built around Magic Johnson, but that final piece, that finishing touch, was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. When Michael Jordan won his first 2 championships, who did they call for that three-peat? Dennis Rodman. What about the Houston Rockets? When they won 2 championships, who was the centerpiece of that team? Hakeem Olajuwon. What about the Spurs? David Robinson and Tim Duncan. What about, we can go even to more modern times, the Phoenix Suns. They had Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. You young bloods probably don't know the names just yet. Let's take it even more modern. So even there are teams in the NBA today still want to rebuild, right? And the big man is their centerpiece of that team. For example, the Philadelphia 76ers. Who was their centerpiece? Joel Embiid. What about the Minnesota Timberwolves? Karl Anthony Towns. What about the Dallas Mavericks? This is interesting. So when Dirk Nowitzki, a big man who was the franchise player for this team for over 15 years, who did they make sure that they had to get after that blockbuster trade with the Knicks? Kristaps Porzingis. Even the Lakers today. When LeBron James, first season in LA, and he missed the playoffs, that Los Angeles teams missed the playoffs, who did the Lakers make sure that they got? Anthony Davis. So I know that Anthony Davis was the best player in that free agency class, but check this out. They also got an additional piece. Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard, that man is completely out of his prime, but they knew how much value that Dwight Howard can still bring, even though he's in a tender age, right? I can even think about other teams besides the Lakers. What about the Miami Heat? Who is that centerpiece for that Miami Heat team? And yo, that Heat team is killing it. They are probably one of the best defensive teams out there. And they are probably one of the best teams in terms of like spacing and distributing the ball evenly. Who is that centerpiece? Or that cornerstone for that Miami Heat team? Bam. Yo. If you think that I'm talking facts, you got to make sure that you hit that like button. Man, I can name other teams on top of my head. The Utah Jazz. Who did they first draft to make sure that this is a centerpiece? Rudy Gobert. Yo. I'm just talking pure facts right now, man. Man, I just have a lot. I have a lot to say. Maybe I should make a part 2. You never know. All I have to say, big men, we rule. We are the centerpiece of a team. We are the glue.